Remote's king. What would we do without remote controls?
Use our legs a little more often.
Well, we have been deep in discussion about Patreon, essentially. And we may get into that a little bit today on the podcast. But it did mean that we ran over time, and now we've left very little time to actually podcast.
Do the main event for the day.
To do the main thing. But it had to be done, and it's been a super busy week. I hate telling people that I'm busy. It's like I don't know, it's a social norm. It's also such a hangover from when I was entering into the workforce, I say tongue-in-cheek, laughingly, leaving school to be a musician and feeling like everyone thought I was a bum. And so anytime anyone would ask how things, and I'd always go, oh yeah, I'm really busy. And I think in my mind I was busy. I was practicing guitar a lot, and that was busy. But there was that definite sense of pressure of saying that I was busy because I didn't want people to think that I was a dole bludger, as we say in Australia. So
yeah, I think it's definitely been a thing where there's some kind of status associated with being busy and having so much on your plate and having to do so many things and so many people relying on you, and it's just everyone's got stuff to do. I don't care anymore. I know I'm pretty busy.
Well, I know my mind races and it keeps me up at night.
I know that we haven't had a proper holiday in 2 decades. So
we're trying to get the boat finished. Now, this will make us sound like we're loaded, but
our boat is nearly ready for the season.
Although, to put it in context, it looks like it's going to cost us $700 to get a new axle, springs, wheels, tyres, get some welding done, and that's it's just for the trailer that the tinny sits on, and we don't have the money to do that.
Yeah,
so,
the boat. I can't wait for this boat. It's so exciting because this is a family heirloom almost. It's been in my family
called
for
the
a
Weekend
long
Warrior.
time. Yeah, this is a really special boat that my grandfather purchased essentially for my brother and my cousin, and they had a great time using it. And then my other cousin got a lot of use out of it, and now I'm the fourth cousin to sort of want to get into it and take it out a little bit. And we're finally at a position where that might be a reality in terms of we don't have 4 kids now. We're trying to squeeze into the boat there. We still have those 4 kids, but yeah, they don't all want to come out on weekend little fishing trips with us. But we are hopeful that Birdie will be able to come in the boat for little excursions, and that'll be something we'll be able to build up in her repertoire of activities, and that we can take the boys out as well, and take all of our other ones out, our other 3 kids out when they want to, or if they would like to, or sometimes even just you and me out on the boat together.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Like a date.
I was talking to a mate of mine this week, and I told him that I'd worked out it was 1 hour and 15 minutes door to door, or door to boat ramp, for us to get to the Goulburn River, or an offshoot of the Goulburn River. I can't remember what it's called.
And does that include picking up the boat on the way?
No, well, he was pointing that out.
Right. I was going to say, I think
I said on a day that we have 2 carers, so covering off 6 hours of care, we would be able to leave, pick up the boat from where it's stored at your brother's. So that would add, in a perfect world, that would add half an hour to the trip. Mm-hmm. And it's on the way, so that's good. Mm-hmm. So that's half an hour there, half an hour back. That's an hour plus the hour and a quarter to get to the ramp, assuming no one's there that we've got to wait for. Mm-hmm. So that's 2.5 hours plus that hour to pick up and drop off. So that's 3.5 hours basically just to get there and back, which leaves us 2.5 hours of nothing going wrong on the river. And we've got enough petrol, I think, on board to take us, is it 4 kilometres upstream and your brother was saying, go upstream, that way if you've miscalculated, you run out, you can float back to the ramp. So
okay.
I think
Whew,
I know you've got.
It sounds tight.
We are in winery country though up there, so
yeah, okay.
we can motor to Mitchelton Wines.
Yeah.
Get off at the. It's actually what your brother did to get his wife into going boating with him. Was they stopped off at the winery and had lunch there or something.
Oh, I mean, it just sounds absolute bliss, doesn't it? Hop in the boat, travel up the river a bit, hop off at the jetty to walk up to the winery, have lunch, beautiful scenery, back into the boat. I mean, doesn't get much better, does it? Like,
I know, except that in what the calculations I just had, we'd be able to get to, if everything went to plan and went smoothly, we'd be able to get to the winery's jetty and then turn around and go back.
oh no.
Unless a carer met us up
occasionally we're
there.
going to need further care on those days. Or how about this? We restructure our week and do it on a weekday.
Yeah, we could do it on a weekday.
Because Bertie's at school, so she's got her school time. And
okay, we'd have to leave early. I guess we wouldn't be encountering anyone else using the ramp then
not
either.
As much, yeah. And there's just more, I don't know, more leeway, I suppose, especially if we organise a carer for a school pickup.
We do,
just to make sure, because I think that for me, the idea of something going wrong and all of a sudden I can't be back in time for her, that's the anxiety. Like, I mean, honestly, that gives me more anxiety than the thought of like the boat having a hole and us going down in the middle of the Goulburn. Like that I can handle, but being late to get back to Bertie, that's the stress. So
I think
everything else is just the adventure that comes.
I'm sure the records will show. I mean, I'm not a boater. Remember what about Bob? I'm a sailor. I sail. He's just this. He's strapped to the mast. I think I'm not a yachtsman or I'm not a boater, but I do believe the records will show the amount of aluminium boats that have had a hole in the bottom on the Goulburn River and sunk, or even had a hole in the bottom at all, is probably zero.
Okay, well, there we go.
There's probably
no stress. I mean, there's no other things. It's not like it's the ocean and we're going to encounter bad weather.
No, well, the last time I went in a tinny on the ocean, it was a perfectly calm, glassy day. I got seasick. I felt so ill.
So
on the
when
bay,
you say you're not a sailor, you really know.
I mean, the bay's big. It can get choppy out there, but it was pretty peaceful. And I did not feel good. I tried to hop on a swing last week just to show our daughter.
They've just updated our park just up at the corner there.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a hole in the fence, so we went through. And she was showing interest in the slide, and she went down the slide. And I said, how about the swing? And she was like, nah. And I said, come on, I'll have a little go. And I had half a swing and was like, oh, I'm off. I did not like it at all.
It's funny because she went to Funfields with a carer on Sunday, and the carer came back and said, oh my goodness, she is an absolute daredevil. She wanted to go on every big slide, every big water slide, every ride, all the ones that fling you up in the air and spin you around and dump you back down. She was just laughing and having the best time. So when she said no to the swing, she was probably just saying, no, that looks a little lame, Dad. It's not that I don't want to be on there. Yeah, well, she certainly has no sense really of danger. No real fear.
So, yeah, it wasn't that. I think she just had enough of being in the playground that we weren't actually meant to be in net. So
I know, respect the fence.
She was
It'll be
respecting
open
the
soon.
law.
I'm hoping that they've got it fenced off because they're waiting for the nice landscaping to actually grow, give it a chance. So
yes.
soon
so we haven't had
so
not a busy week. Let's just say we've had an eventful week. I broke my tooth. That was fun in a meeting, no less.
Say in a fight. It sounds better.
Broke my tooth and having a coffee with a couple of other people and one of them said, is that it there on your lap? And I had to say, yes. And then I said, can you tell that I've broken my tooth? And I smiled at her and she said, I am sorry. Yes, you can.
Well, it is the front tooth, so no hiding it.
Yeah.
But now
so that was
repaired.
That was fun. That was repaired.
You can smile once again.
Anyway, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Pain in the Arts, the podcast where the pursuit of meaningful art meets the unpredictable demands of real life. I'm Brea and Lyndon.
And I am Lyndon. Welcome to the show. Well, that was very professionally done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I did read it off the script.
I know. It's like the only thing we have a script for. You'd think we would learn it off by heart, but whatever.
Well, we don't want to stumble over it.
No. So today is kind of going to be a little bit of an origin story, I think.
Okay.
I think, loosely. The reason being is that this week we've both recorded our subscriber-only podcasts.
We have.
And so yours is called In Search of Home.
Yep.
And mine is called Echoes of Home.
Yep.
So that was a really good thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't monumental. It was a good thing to get underway.
It was, yeah. Great to start it.
Yeah, and so it kind of got me thinking about where we've got a few episodes now under our belt of Pain in the Arts, and it was probably just timely, I think, to talk more about the vision, I guess, that we've had for this. And I say that sort of loosely because we're more than aware of how this is sort of evolving and playing out in real time. I think when we were recording your podcast, you were talking about gathering all your notes and finding remnants of scripts and how half your work so far is still lost on a hard drive sitting under our table, and we don't even know if it can be recovered because we could never reboot that computer. So it really is like the evolution of something. So we have an idea of how we think we can sort of conduct our lives as writers or as a writer and as a musician living together. And we have an idea based on the last, say, decade or more of how things have sort of panned out and the trials and tribulations and things we've had to duck and weave around, how those things have played out. So we can have a sense of planning, knowing that there's always curveballs, but also knowing that with the creative processes that we subject ourselves to, you just have to start. You don't always know how things are going to go. And I guess this week has sort of been like that in a good way.
Yeah.
Apart from my tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought timely to talk about it. And we have also mentioned a lot, I think, doing the work. So what we're referring to when we talk about the work is the art that we want to bring to life.
Yeah.
So it's the books, the music, the novels, the songs. It's our ideas that need exploring and expressing, and I'm too old to stop now, you know what I mean?
Well, when we first got together, which I was 16, you were 19.
12. Yeah, I was 19.
You were 19.
Yeah.
And it's been a part of our relationship since then. It's obviously been a part of each of our lives as we've been growing up, like the things that we love most. And I can't actually imagine a point at which we go, you know what, that's it, that's enough. We're tired of what this does to us. We're poor. We're unstructured.
You're really selling the dream.
But you know what I mean? It's like it's too ingrained in who we are. Like even with all of the pain in the arts, literally, that we go through, it's just too much a part of who we are to not be a part of our daily lives, I suppose.
Yeah. So many things were coming up for me when you were talking about that. Oh, I've got to be kind to myself, so I'm going to ignore all those intrusive thoughts. So if we could just look at the overall reason that we started the Pain in the Arts podcast was that we were now working together in the same space. Up until last year, really, I was out every day.
Yep. So you had the coffee van, you were doing daily, you had going to the other studio where you were working on other people's projects most of the time. So definitely leaving in the morning, getting back in the evening.
Yeah.
I was sort of working half from home, half from the office. Yeah, just doing things here and there, yeah.
So we had the opportunity to do something together and I wouldn't say pool our resources, but just we're looking towards the future and what things, you know what it was? It's a calibration.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did that during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Really just taking stock of what they really wanted to do. And something that you obviously were in the middle of working on was your novel.
Yeah.
And so a big part of the reason of starting this podcast was to afford yourself the time to reconnect with that.
Yeah. And to just kind of really push it right up in the list of priorities. I mean, I think in general, mums put themselves last in the list of priorities. It's something that I've had to try to not do that so much anymore and prioritise my health a bit more and things like that. But prioritising getting a creative project done that obviously involves a huge amount of commitment to it and no certainty about whether it'll ever become a commercial sort of success or anything. You know, it does. That's a really big thing to be able to put that up really quite up high in the list of priorities in a family and in a busy household like we have. So, yeah, this has been something we've talked about for a long time is prioritising each of our individual artistic endeavours. And, yeah, at the moment it's happening a little bit more.
Yeah, and unlike the wife novelist in the movie The Wife, which
we
spoiler alert, turn this off now if you want to watch the movie and you don't want it spoilt. But the husband wins the Nobel Prize, but it's actually for literature. But it was the wife that wrote everything. Yeah, but she was
pretty much been his ghostwriter for his whole entire career.
Yeah, for his whole career, and he's written like best-selling books and things. And so she was in the room writing 8 hours a day, didn't see the kids. That's certainly not been how you've approached family life and art and writing. You've certainly had it's been sort of squished out of you in that sense. And I've found the same thing with a lot of my musical aspirations. And
it's quite hard to prioritise them when you feel like it's a bit of an indulgence or it's a bit of like something that you're not sure what the outcome of it will be. And there's much more pressing needs, obviously, with children and, you know, just the general day-to-day things of life. But, you know, also even when you sort of try to think like a responsible adult and like go, how are we going to pay for everything? So obviously there's the element of trying to work for a set amount of money that you can physically see and you know when you're going to get it. Like that's huge when you're raising a family, obviously. So, yeah, it has been difficult to prioritise those creative projects and, as you're saying, they get squished into the little margins, but we don't want them squished in there anymore. We'd like them to be given a bit more free rein.
Yeah, and so I saw my role really as, well, I've got this studio here. I could record your podcast. If you're going to talk about the writing of the novel and so on, then I'll engineer it and produce it for you. That's what I was thinking I'll do. Anyway, as time's gone on, it's sort of morphed into that there'll be an audio book. And so how about I also do the music? So write the score or write the soundtrack for that. And I've never written a soundtrack before.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be interesting. And so that's sort of how this has all developed, because we then started talking about, well, what will this whole thing look like if we're working together, and how's it going to look with you writing the book? What's the access to the podcast going to look like, and so on. So that brings us to this week where we recorded your podcast, which is available for members on Patreon. So in that podcast, you read some passages of your book. Now, we'll get onto that a little bit more. So you're reading the thoughts of Audrey.
Yep.
And was it the thoughts of Tom?
I think actually,
or the words of Tom.
I did that in your podcast, and then I've said take it out.
Was that in my podcast?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's not actually something that I've wanted to do right now.
So we recorded it. We recorded the first episode of my subscriber-only show, Echoes of Home, and we were discussing how I might approach the music. That's right. We're having I sprung on you a live brainstorming session.
Yes.
That's what that's what the first episode was. Because I needed to understand the characters, the book, and I just thought, well, I might as well get you in and we'll talk about it, because it was the very first step for me in hearing about the book and so on. And also hearing about your ideas that you may or may not have had for the music, which I didn't expect that you would have, as an author, actually had given the music any thought.
I had
whatsoever,
not.
Really.
No, I hadn't thought of the music. I had thought about the characters, obviously, a lot, and I can give you a lot of just information that will then inform how you develop the soundtrack and develop the sounds for those characters.
Well, what I wasn't prepared for was the emotional upheaval just from what you read. And I realised that I've been so caught up in the development of this podcast, which has been a lot of work over the past few months. And the practicalities, the planning, covering off all of the tech side of things, creating the artwork, putting the website together, all of that sort of stuff. And so when we're recording this week, I sort of was a bit blindsided, or I wasn't prepared for the power of the written word, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I had a number of realisations.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that, after we recorded it, I think maybe the next day, you asked me to remove what you read.
Yeah, I'd sort of started to get into the conversation, obviously, let's brainstorm about the soundtrack. That's really just so exciting, and talking about these characters that live in my mind. Yeah, great stuff. And so I'd started to, as I was talking about the characters, go, let me give you an example. Here's some of what their words are and the tone of voice that they each use, and the way I develop those different tones of voice, the different techniques I use, and how I've developed that over time. I could go on, and obviously I did a little bit in the podcast about the soundtrack.
Yeah, but it wasn't that stuff. It was when you were reading the actual transcript, or what would you call it? Is it?
It's my manuscript.
Manuscript.
Yeah, I call it a manuscript before it's.
So when you're reading from the manuscript, that's what I'm talking about. Because it was so. I mean, it's when you have this. Would you call it an epiphany? And you kind of go, oh well, obviously. It was a bit. It was one of those sort of moments where, I mean, you could talk about the processes and, like you just mentioned, and it's. I mean, I find that interesting, but it was the words, I guess, that you'd settled on, and that you were reading, where the power was, and so this is what I realised. I suddenly felt a greater sense of responsibility for the music. So I think I probably am a closet perfectionist. So I was always going to approach the music with particular ideas and standards in mind, but that's different to sort of feeling these words can stand alone. They don't need the music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I felt a greater sense of responsibility for that. I also felt that it's going to be a very important book, which I think I sort of knew. I suspected it would be, but I think it really is. The other thing, I've got a few points here that I realised, and actually that's what I was saying before, was the next day when you came in and you said that I think you said, I've made an error. I shouldn't have read those things. And we hadn't spoken about it.
No, it wasn't a planned thing to do in the podcast.
No, but we hadn't even spoken about it afterwards.
Yeah,
you just came in and said, and I think, I obviously hadn't started editing.
Yeah.
But you'd said, I've made an error. I think I need to remove what I read out. And you probably said why, but immediately when you said it, I thought, I have to remove it. And I think for me, I just thought, because I'd already been contemplating like what it all meant, I suppose. And I just felt like this immediate sense of, oh, this is actually really big. And what was your reason though for removing it? It was
I just felt that I had put it into a conversation where when people are hearing this for the first time or reading it for the first time, it deserves the right context of the whole book together, or me setting the scene rather than me just kind of pulling parts of it out as an example. And look, down the line maybe, for instance, if somebody's, I don't know, talking about it for a book club, they would read out a section or whatever. But at that point, the book would exist in its own form and, have the solidity of its own context around it, where I felt that I'd put it out there in this podcast episode without those proper surrounds that it deserves. I just kind of thought, no, it's too soon for that to just exist this early in the game in this podcast. So, that's why I'd said we need to take those parts out.
Because I was thinking about removing them and was trying to work out why I thought they should be removed. So since then, in the past couple of days is when I've put down some of these thoughts, trying to work out my feelings that came up, I guess.
Which I'm very interested in
yes,
hearing.
well, you would be.
Yeah.
I told you I couldn't tell you about this before we started recording. It's fun, isn't it?
It is. It's actually really great to
weird
kind of
feedback.
go. Yeah.
The other thing I realised is that you're the real talent in the family, which I knew. It's funny that none of these things I didn't already know. It's just sometimes it's just context, it's timing, it's a whole bunch of different things. And I was watching this week the making of Luck and Strange, which is the new Dave Gilmour album.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
wow.
You've probably been a bigger Pink Floyd fan than me because of the influence of your brother, who is a few years older than you.
Yep.
And I mean, I do love Pink Floyd as well, but I love it as in there's certain songs that I love, and I love it. There's nerdy aspects of it that I like.
Yeah, I think I actually still have a copy of The Wall in tape form because my brother either gave it to me or I borrowed it and then just never returned it when he moved out of home, or I don't know. But that thing, I listened to that over and over. It was the double album, and it was quite long, and I just listened to that on repeat, I reckon, for years. I could probably sing you really badly every lyric and every guitar line.
You could, but you'll change key 5 times.
And so that's when I disagree that I'm the real talent in the family.
Well, I might get this wrong. I think his wife's name is Molly.
This is Dave Gilmour, isn't it?
Dave Gilmour's wife. I think she wrote lyrics on the Division Bell. I know she's a poet.
Yeah.
She might be a photographer and she's clearly into the arts. And I imagine she's got her own career and whatnot. But there's no denying in that relationship that Dave Gilmour is the public star, you know what I mean? Like he's the legend. So I was watching that and I felt like Molly, as in, you know what I mean? Like I felt like,
as in you felt like Molly.
Yeah. Like not to reduce her role in any way, because I think it sounds like, really... and like when you hear her talk, it just sounds like she's a great person who's had an amazing life and is talented.
Yeah, and he's contributed to incredible albums and,
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, actually, something funny that is in an interview where he said that during lockdown, the whole family must be musical. And so they became the Von Trapp family, which I thought was brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? If your book becomes massive, I'd be perfectly comfortable and happy with that. And I would sort of think, you know what, well, rightly so. Anyway, so that was my third point. So I think it will be a very important book.
Well, thank you, because I know that you don't tend to give...
I have a lot of thoughts and I don't say them.
Yeah, but you never say something is good unless you actually think it.
That's true.
You never ever do.
I have to bite my tongue a lot. Hold my tongue.
Yeah,
I've never situations.
I've never known you to actually lie about something that you think has actually got merit. So
yeah,
which is good, and I'm glad. I don't want to ever hear you puffing me up when I'm not, and I wouldn't really know if it meant anything.
And I realise that I'm close to this, to the topics that the book covers and whatnot. So I imagine there's some sort of bias, except that I wonder how much that actually comes into play when something kind of moves you emotionally. Like I wonder how much the actual thinking brain is involved, if that makes sense.
I think your emotions speak before your brain can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if it was just like, oh yeah, like I understand what you're writing about, if it was that sort of coming from that, then it wouldn't have taken me so long to process it. Because literally when we say that you read out some parts of the manuscript, it was probably 7 sentences.
Yeah, there was
it wasn't
a
lot.
Short part from both of the main characters, Tom and Audrey. Tom's more wordy and Audrey's words are very scant but quite meaningful.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And remember too, like I had just said, hey, look, I'm going to record my first episode of Echoes of Home. Jump on the mic because I want to know what you're thinking because I'm trying to work out a starting point for the music. It's a very, very terrible explanation of the
yeah,
process.
But you do, yeah, I understand you need to get some context and some beginning points so that then it can kind of percolate and eventuate into some musical ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that are relevant and context.
Yeah. So I wasn't really prepared for anything other than just that kind of a discussion. So the other thing was the power of words and how important it is that they exist.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping that the readers have the same palpable, visceral reaction that I had when hearing you put into words things that cannot be said. Yeah. So I think that was the other thing, is because the character Audrey is nonverbal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think about the importance of words and then you think about someone who hasn't got any or many words, and then to give like a voice to that.
Yeah. And this is, I suppose, where I feel very emotional about it too, because throughout all of my writing and all of the study that I did doing a master's degree, the central question of my work and my study is, because I have a non-verbal or non-speaking daughter, just how hard that would be for her to present in the world and for her to interact with the world. Because for me, words are one of the most important things, and my daughter doesn't have access to them. And I've found that in every single piece of my writing, it almost doesn't matter what it is, probably apart from work I do for business clients and so on, but any piece of creative writing, even almost all of my journal entries
anytime I write anything, it often always comes back to Birdie and just this internal conflict I feel of having her be able to have a voice in the world when she has very few words at all. And I feel like as somebody who loves words and who has made it kind of my lifelong joy to be reading and to be writing, and the thing that I dig into most and give my most, I guess I've given a lot of my time to it, but my most dedication to as well, you know, is to finding the right words for the right situations and wrapping my thoughts in the words that not only describe something but give a flavour to it and an emotion to it and so on. There's just so many layers of what words can do. And so I feel like there's an obligation or
responsibility.
Yeah, responsibility, or just a calling in some way that I am an interface for Birdie in her daily life, but more than that, to give words to her character and who she is underneath. So it's more than just what does she need to survive. It's how does she experience this incredible life, and how does she experience it in such a different way to people around her, because she really does. And the things that she shows us about living and about the world that we're in are really quite extraordinary, and you miss them if you're not watching. And so many people don't get to see the way that she goes through this world. So, yeah. Don't ask me deep questions.
I didn't. I made a statement about my reaction to hearing the words of someone who can't speak. So there was no question there.
Well, yeah, but now I've explained what goes on in my head and why I write.
But the conflict is also the fact that, like you say, there's that extraordinary side to her that's easily missed. And yet, on the other side of that sword is a very complicated, hard to manage child.
Yeah.
That we'll be caring for the rest of our lives, for like God willing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there is that conflict. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and you. You have to go.
I've got to go pick her up. She's waiting.
Yeah. Before you go, my fifth point, so my last point in that realisation, is that the book has to exist. It has to be written, and it doesn't need the music. So another thing that I knew, like, it doesn't need the music. The book, when it comes out as a book, isn't going to have a CD in there or, or whatever. It's not going to have like a QR code to spot. Actually, that's a good idea. Maybe it will have a QR code to Spotify, but it doesn't need the music, and so it itself is bigger than the idea of doing this collaboration. So I thought that was sort of like that was another big takeaway, where I thought, okay, this is like me doing the music and me producing your podcast is a way of making it happen, supporting you, making sure that time is given for you to write the novel. But now I've sort of seen that, the novel really doesn't need me. Like, it doesn't. But at the same time, the music now that I'm going to be writing for the soundtrack, I suddenly am like, okay, it has to be as unique as the characters, and it has to do justice to the writing and to the ideas behind the writing. So it's just created this, and rightly so, a greater sense of responsibility and, I don't know, duty is probably not the right word. It's just, something else that I need to navigate. And it really is, unfortunately, playing into the bad parts of my perfectionism that stops me from doing anything. Because anytime I get an idea, I go, oh, it's not right. It's not good enough. It's not like, whereas maybe last week I would have run with something a lot sooner, whereas now I'm like, no, I know, I can just feel that it's not the right thing to do. So anyway.
Well, hopefully it will, and perhaps, I can give you some further insights into the characters by reading some more for your ears only or reading it. But,
well,
I hope that the music will do a credit, I suppose, to the book. And if
it's not right, we pull it. That's what you're saying.
Well, if I didn't think that you were capable of doing a soundtrack that would sit alongside the book and be an equal component, then I wouldn't say yes to it, I suppose. Like, yeah. So I do think
but there's always, I mean, like I said I think I was saying in my podcast that I was treating you like a client. You've got every right at some point to kind of go, it's not working, change it. And then right at the end, you could kind of go, you know what, we're just going to go without the music. And this whole podcast would still be documenting that my demise and my downfall. That's that's perfectly fine.
No, I think it's for you, it's one project. Obviously, for me, it's probably the biggest thing I've worked on, and I definitely feel the pressure to get it right, not just as a creative piece and a work that I would hope that I can get published, but because I feel that, I don't know, it's not duty, it's not obligation, but
purpose.
It's not even that I owe it to Birdie, but it is a sort of purpose. It's a purposeful thing to give a voice to a character that I am basing off our real life daughter. And I take that really seriously. It's not a line that I write that I don't have that in mind. So it's definitely coming from a very deep place, and I want to do justice to it. And I know that you will as well with the soundtrack.
Well, I'm not going to talk anymore because you really need to go.
Yeah, I've got to go. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts, and I'm really glad that you had an emotional response to the words on the page.
Well, you wouldn't have known at the time because I'm a man's man, and I was.
And we just got on with the show.
Well, I figure stuff out. I deal with my emotions later.
Like a real man's man.
Yeah. All right. Well,
All right.
I might let you go, and I will maybe sign off.
Wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up.
Thank you. See you next time, everyone.
Bye. Whoa. Well, that was unexpectedly emotional there for a moment, but that's fine. As it should be. As it should be. Oh, how do I summarise that? So essentially what started as a collaboration for the sake of finishing a project has turned into something much more personal and profound for me. Yeah, and it's just reminded me that art has the power to reach people in ways that we don't always understand. And in a way, that's why we're doing this podcast as well. It's to remind ourselves and anyone listening that the work matters and that it's worth making space for. Before we wrap up, we wanted to share something that we're really excited about. However, Bree's left the building, so I will be doing it on my own. And so as we mentioned, we've both recorded the first episodes of our individual subscriber-only podcasts, and they're a bit different from this show. They're definitely more focused on the day-to-day of bringing our projects to life, so they're more personal in that sense. And yeah, Bree's documenting the process of writing her novel, No Word for Home, and I'm sharing the journey of composing the music for its audiobook. And these shows take you behind the scenes of building something creative from the ground up. So if that's something that you're interested in, you should head over to our Patreon page. So both of those podcasts are on Patreon. And here's how that all works. So as a subscriber, you can listen to the early access episodes and bonus podcasts directly in your favourite podcast app. So there's no extra hassle. You will need to head over to patreon.com/painintheartslife, and you just choose your membership level, and then you'll have access on your favourite podcast app. So that's how that all works. And of course, on the Patreon app itself is where you find some other bonus content. So you'll get community chat, you get behind the scenes content, exclusives. That's all online at Patreon or through the Patreon app. So yeah, very easy. Your support helps keep this whole creative juggernaut going. Well, I need a drink. Thank you so much for listening, and keep creating if you're a creator, and keep supporting the creators if you love the creative arts. See you next week.